What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing a tier review list of all the games of 2022, or at least the games that I've played. And there's a lot of them, so I'm just gonna put them all on screen now so you can take a look and see what's to come. I think this is a pretty good year for gaming, so I'm hoping that this video is mostly praising games rather than the last video, which is just mostly dunking on games. But that being said, I definitely will probably be dunking on some games here. Okay, just understand that these are my personal feelings towards the game, okay? You have to think of this less as an in-depth review of a game where I go over all the nuances and mechanics, and more like it's Friday night, you know, you're my buddy, you busted into my home for some reason, you sat me down and you demanded to know all my opinions on each game released in 2022, okay? So word of warning, yes, I might dunk on some of your favorite games. Don't hate me. Okay, we're starting off pretty good here. We're gonna start with Blood in the Clock Tower. So Blood in the Clock Tower, if you're not familiar, is a social deduction game, a very, very grandiose social deduction game that costs a bucket load of money, where you are trying to determine who the killer is, and it's one of those games where you need a narrator. But the problem I have with it is that there's so much work that is required of the storyteller that the whole thing just feels terribly convoluted and messy, because there's so many different powers that all the players can have. And that's the good thing about the game, and that's the bad thing about the game. You know, it's the good thing because unlike Werewolf, you actually feel involved, and you're even involved when you die, which is wonderful. But it's a bad thing because one player, the moderator, has to sort of keep track of all these different player powers, and not to mention explain all these powers to all the players. And I think I'm gonna give it a B. I'm not a big social deduction person, but I think this is definitely one of the better ones, especially in a party setting. So next up, we have Perseverance: Castaway Chronicles. So Perseverance is an area control, worker placement, tower defense game with a persistent campaign story where you fight dinosaurs, essentially. I was born for this game, okay? I have been training to fight dinosaurs since I was a child. It's hard to really give you a good explanation of the mechanics because the mechanics over the course of the story sort of change, but mostly it is a worker placement game, and those worker placement spots sort of blossom and open up as you progress along the story. You know, you gather resources and set some traps and build shelters and do all that general worker placement type stuff, and then eventually at the end, the dinosaurs attack, and then the towers have to basically just beat the crap out of them. You know, the game was a lot of fun. You know, it was very thematic, a little heavy, which is something you expect from Minecraft games, but me and Kim, we enjoy that type of stuff. This is something you're gonna learn very quickly. I'm not a big campaign game kind of person. I would give this an A because I did have a good time. I don't like that idea of playing the same game over and over and over and over again. I like variety, but if you do like campaign games, I can see this being an easy S, but for me, it's an A. Okay, do you remember what I said in the intro that I was gonna spend less time dunking? Well, apparently I'm a liar. I'm a liar. The next up, we have Dice Realms. So in Dice Realms, you're using removable faces on dice to build an entire kingdom. It's basically that age-old, you know, roll some dice, get some shit, but except here, you have the wonderful and very impractical task of applying little faces to dice. So Kim and I were popping off those stupid dice sides and eventually just ended up looking at each other at the exact same time, and probably with the exact same thought of like, what are we doing here? And that was the most that was the most interaction that this game has probably ever seen. Because it's mostly a solo player experience, but you know, strategically, what it was offering, it was like a barren landscape of choices. It was not an interesting game. For me, this is an easy F. And oh my word, the art on the dice faces, they're hideous. They're hideous. Like, it looks like it was designed in like MS Word. It's practical, but it's ugly. Yeah, I hate this game. I hate it. Great start to 2022. Okay, we're getting back into positive mode now. Up next, we have Carnegie. So in Carnegie, you play as a businessman, you know, sort of sending your employees around the country, building new offices and all that other crap. There is no theme here. Let's not pretend. It's pretty much just entirely based around the mechanisms. And the mechanisms here are very solid. I started playing this online on Board Game Arena, and I just quickly sort of fell in love, and I had to purchase the game and show it to my friends. It's a lean follow mechanic that Kim and I really enjoy, where you are encouraged to sort of look over at other players and see what they're doing and see what they're planning, so that when it comes their turn, you know to have your employees ready to perform whatever action you think they're gonna perform. I like that. I like those sort of mind games. And there's a lot of really cool ways the game sort of encourages you to think forward, because you have to place your workers in various regions on the map, And the only way you're going to get income when a player takes their turn is if you're able to take an employee off that region. It's just one of those games that continually rewards tactical decision-making on the fly and long-term strategic planning, and I like that. I feel like I'm leaning towards an A here, but I really enjoy it, and I make my friends play it. I don't think they like it as much as I do, but yeah, it's an S. It's an S. Our first S. Okay, so positive mode is now over. That lasted for what, an entire game? But next is Dog Park. So in Dog Park, you're presented with the greatest thematic connection in all of board gaming. You are a dog walker, and you want to become the most prestigious dog walker on the block, I guess. Brilliant. It's a pretty simple game, and perhaps it's a little too simple. You know, I only have so much room in my collection for family games, and even if it's a family game, it still needs to evoke some sort of deep thinking. And I don't think this game is able to do that. It is a very cute game, but that cuteness, it's not enough to carry it. I didn't feel particularly involved in a lot of the decision making. The choices sort of felt obvious to me. I think it's not an awful game. I didn't hate it. So let's go with a D. The D. It's not mediocre. It's a little below mediocre. But maybe I'm being too harsh on the game. Let's ask Goose. Goose, you hate the Dog Park too, right? Oh, what do you know? You're just a dog. You don't play games. So next up is Bullet Star. If you're not familiar with the Bullet series, there's Bullet Star and Bullet Heart. I own the original game. We did a review on it, so if you want more detailed analysis of it, provided by me and Kim, you go check that out. The only real difference between these two versions is the heroines that are available. I think the base game is better, but this one's still pretty good too. So Bullet is this awesome two-player abstract puzzle game that all plays in real time, where you're pulling bullets out of your bag and trying to fit them on your board, Tetris style, as they fall from the top, all using these sort of like cool powers that the heroines provide and new powers that you can gain along the way by purchasing them. It's unique, it's fun, it plays really quickly. Kim doesn't like it as much as I do, but I think it's a really great game to bust out when, you know, you're having a game night and one friend comes over maybe a little too early. I think it's a really good B game. I will say there's probably some bias here because it has cute anime girls. So, you know, I'm a man of culture. What can I say? Okay, up next is, well, it's time to lose some subscribers because up next is Votes for Women, and I did not like Votes for Women. So Votes for Women is a multi-use card game where you're campaigning across the United States of America in an effort to swing states either in favor or against providing women the vote. I went online directly after playing this game just to check what other people thought about it. And I started to feel like I was an insane person because I would watch all these like reviewers and I'd read all these reviews, basically like praising it like it's the greatest game in existence. The majority of the reviews every single time was about the historical significance of the historical event and not necessarily about the mechanics of the game. And I can understand why, because it's a bad game. This is a really awful game. It's so simple and like terribly boring. You know, I didn't feel like I was making any semblance of interesting choices on my turn. You know, maybe it's because I had just played The Living Hell out of Hegemony, and I had somewhat recently played Twilight Struggle in 1960, Making of the President. This game just felt like a lighter version of those games, but not even in a good way. So you have these cards, right? And you either have to play them for the event written on the card, or you play them for a button. And the button essentially acts as the game's currency to do these like really basic, boring actions. There's no action points or interesting decisions here. You know, instead of carefully deciding where I'm going to campaign, I just roll some dice. Or maybe you want to petition Congress. Well, guess what? Just roll some more dice. And if you roll a 6, you did it. Or I know, what if you end up playing one of the games where the entire game gets decided in a roll-off between 2 players? And you go through each individual state and swing it one way or the other based on how well you roll. Yeah, I'm not joking. That's a possible ending to the game. This isn't the easiest F rank I have ever given a board game. It really is. I want to make an aside here, okay? I am not downplaying the historical significance of the game. In fact, I think it's a cool theme. I think it's one more games to try to explore. But this ain't it. This ain't it. This is a bad game. This is a bad game. Kim, if you are watching this though, you know, I want you to know that I am by in this game, I am not against women being able to vote, okay? Actually, I don't think Kim can vote. She's Singaporean. All right, so we're moving to another historical game, except less suffrage, more killing. I've gushed enough over this series. It's Undaunted Stalingrad. I didn't enjoy this one as much as the others, primarily because I'm not a big campaign gamer. If you are, this is something that I think you would really enjoy. But for myself, I would give this an A. It's still a very good game. I mean, it's Undaunted. Of course, it's good. I do really like the way the game attempted to flesh out the characters even more. So it's not just a name on a card. It's something that you will see over and over again. And so as you keep playing the same characters, they sort of develop a story, which it kind of makes losing them far more impactful. I think that's brilliant. So next up is Caesar Sees Rome in 20 minutes or something. So in Caesar, you'll place a small disc on a battle map. Each of those discs has a number on them. And when all the spots are full, the province is closed. And whoever has the most numbers, it wins that province. It's a relatively simple game, but there's a lot of good tactical decision making to be had within that simplicity. It's a tough decision deciding whether or not, to focus on, this province or that province, and whether or not you should beef up your defenses or not worry about it and sort of push elsewhere. I would give this an easy B. It's an easy B. It's a good game. Now we have Caper Europe. Caper is a card drafting game for 2 players. At the start of each round, you draft either a thief and assign them a specific heist location, or you assign them gear, which will make them stronger and give them better abilities. It's a light game. It's very cute. It actually surprised the hell out of me. I had a lot of fun with this one. And the game's tension, despite being a lighter game, seemed to ramp up quite significantly as the game went on. And there's a lot of really good, tough decisions to make, where you have to decide, like, okay, am I going to try to win this location, or do I want to try to, complete my set of stolen goods over here? And all the characters, they'll have like these special abilities. Plus you get to be mean, and I love being mean in games because one of your cards is like a flamethrower, and you can use it to burn the equipment on the opposing players. And so you get this sort of strategic play where it's like, okay, I need to hurry up and get another equipment over top of that equipment card so I can prevent it from getting burned. I think it's really one of the better 2-player drafting games. It's a really good game, and it's worth checking out. So we'll give it an A here. So next is My Shelfie. I played this at Snakes and Lattes a bunch of times. If you're not familiar, it was a famous board game cafe in Toronto. In My Shelfie, you're trying to organize your very own mini Kallax shelf. By dropping games into the slots on the top, you're basically just trying to match them with other games and score points. It's really simple. It's cute for what it is, but I didn't feel like it offered much beyond being cute. I was never really engaged. It just kind of felt like one of those games where, you present it to other people for the novelty and be like, look at this cool thing. And then you put it away and go play something else. Yeah, so for me, I definitely didn't hate it, but this is a D game. This is a D game for sure. Next, we have Creature Comforts. So Creature Comforts is a dice worker placement game where you're going out and you're trying to build the best, most coziest dwelling for your cutest crap animal family. There's a cool push your luck element to this game, which I really enjoyed, where you're placing your workers before you roll the dice. So there's a lot of speculation that goes on and educated guessing that provides a lot of good tension. The difficulty, though, is that we played this at 3 and 4 players, and they were pushing like over 2 hours, which felt like an incredibly light game with not a lot of depth. It just lasted way too long. Like, it lasted way too long. If we could get this done and over with in like 20 minutes, I think I could see this being a B game. But as it stands right now, at least at the 4-player count, oh my word, it's a C game. It's an easy C game. So next up we have Hamburg. Hamburg, you are the mayor of the city, and you're trying to build up Hamburg and make it great. You're doing this by rolling a bunch of dice at the start, and then if you roll 6s or something, bad stuff starts happening to you. I don't want to explain the game much further than that because I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it. I don't want to talk about it. The game felt like the worst part of a lot of worker placement games where, you're constantly having to worry about feeding your people, except here it's just this constant awful things that can happen to you. And you're just doing your absolute best to mitigate that. And to me, this is just not rewarding. At some point I forget, like, I'm supposed to be playing this game to have fun. I'm just not having any fun. Plus, there's so much symbology here that it's incredibly painful to play. This is an F game for me. It is definitely not one of the better Feld games, unfortunately. So next is Boop. Boop is an abstract strategy game where you place a cat on the game board, and if it's adjacent to another cat, you cause it to boop or something. I don't know what that means. It's just the name of the game, okay? Mechanically, the cat just moves a space over, and essentially you want to create a line of 3 cats, and then you win. It's a very light and, of course, disgustingly cute game. I mean, like, look at these player pieces. They're absolutely vile. It's another one of those games where there's very little luck involved. I'm not particularly fond of abstract strategy games. Kim is. I think she would enjoy this one. But for me, it's decent, but it's not great. It's a C. It's a C. Next up is Dorfromantik. So in Dorfromantik, you're placing down tiles to build a little town cooperatively with a friend. And along the way, you're getting little challenges tossed your way, like connecting X amount of train tracks or something. I don't know. Who cares? The game isn't for me. And you know what? That's okay. You know, I can see a lot of people enjoying the hell out of this game because it's so quaint and comforting. It sort of reminds me of playing Stardew Valley or a slice of life anime, which I enjoy. Unfortunately, those two things are much better than Dorfromantik. I guess the reason I like slice of life anime and Stardew Valley much more than Dorfromantik is because they're offering much more than that warm fuzzy feeling. You know, there's some substance to both of those things. Whereas Dorfromantik, it's shallow. It's a really shallow game, and to the point where it just doesn't even feel like a game at all. To me, it's an easy F, but it's one of those games where I can see a lot of other people liking this game, and you might enjoy it. It's definitely something that, even though I gave it an F, I do think you should try it. You should definitely try it because it is different. I'll give it that. So speaking of different and abstract, we have the Turing Machine. So Turing Machine is a clever little puzzle of a game where you have to find a code of 3 numbers in a specific order, and whoever cracks that code first with the fewest turns is the winner. The problem with this game is that it's a pure deduction game, and I've never really been a fan of those types of games. Kim is, I'm not. To me, this is the type of game where you whip it out once with friends to kind of show them how cool it is, and then probably never play again, at least for me. Oh, okay, and to continue the mid-train, we have Flamecraft. So in Flamecraft, you're doing some sort of fair or something and placing dragons on market stalls to get crap, and who cares? Look how cute this game is. Have you seen how cute this game is? The gameplay doesn't matter because the dragons are so darn cute. Kim loathes this game. I think it's completely average. I can take it or leave it. The problem is I never really feel truly engaged when I play this, and a lot of the times everything just starts to feel samey. Every turn feels like the last turn. I don't know why this game is so incredibly popular. I think there's a lot of better family weight games, but it's most certainly not a bad game, and for that I give it a C. Okay, so now we can continue our hate train on Feld games. Next we have Marrakesh. So Marrakesh is an action selection game driven by a cube tower, which I always love, where you're going to get a slew of victory points, which I know you're shocked by that, because it's very rare in Feld games to get a lot of victory points. On your turn, you secretly select 3 of the cylinders you have hidden behind your screen, and then place your assistants in the sections whose colors match your selection. Yeah, none of the process of explaining that game was particularly interesting to me, and so you can imagine how I felt when I played it. I think at this point, we could just say that I think his entire City Collection game series thing is completely mid. to me. Again, it's one of those mediocre games that I in no way hate, but I would never ask to play. So this is an easy C. An easy C. I like it much better than Hamburg, but I don't see it as a particularly good game. And I'll be honest here, I think one of the reasons I'm sort of getting cold on Feld games is because a lot of his games are just, I guess because I played them in such short succession, that they're just starting to bleed together. Like I'm generally getting all his games confused. That's probably not a good thing. Oh, good, I can continue being negative because next we have First Rat. So in First Rat, you're moving your rats up 1 to 5 spaces on a shared board, trying to get to the moon or something. They can't share the same space, and you can move multiple rats if they end up on the same color on the board. You collect resources as you move, and you collect cheese and apple cores and other types of rat crap. I don't know. It was so boring. I wouldn't even recommend this game as a family game, even though complexity-wise, that's precisely where it's sitting. I was never interested in anything I was doing. The turns to me always felt kind of obvious and scripted. This to me is another easy F game. My F list is getting pretty big, which is unfortunate because I did promise this is a better year than 2023. And I do think that. I think it's going to get better. It's going to get better. Okay, it's going to get better, but not yet, okay? Not yet. Because now we have Foundations of Rome. In Foundations of Rome, you're an architect building Rome by throwing down these big plastic tiles on a public board of Rome, trying to score points, and who cares? Look how beautiful it is. Look how big the buildings are, am I right? Gameplay doesn't matter. No, I'm being purposely harsh with this game. Foundations of Rome is a lot, to me, more style over substance. Foundations of Rome is like the Michael Bay equivalent of tile laying games. It's an overly produced polynomial where the mechanics themselves are nothing particularly special. Normally, I wouldn't let cost impact a review of a game, but here it feels a little different because here I'm just giving my gut feelings for these games. Like I said, we're supposed to take this as if you've busted into my home and then demanded I give you my impressions on all these games released in 2022. Foundations of Rome is not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, so it's definitely not a D or F. Yeah, so I give it a C. I give Foundations of Rome a C. It's not, no, you know what? It's cost so much money, I'm giving it a D. This is the one time I will let money impact my rating of the game. It is so overproduced, and it is so expensive. I do not recommend purchasing this. I think there are better polynomial games out there, tile laying games out there that you can enjoy that don't cost you your entire bank account. Okay, good. So now we're turning things around. We're getting more positive. Next, we have the Guild of Merchant Explorers. So in the Guild of Merchant Explorers, everyone plays at the same time, and at the start of the round, you flip a card which dictates where players can lay their cubes. Throughout the game, you'll try to make trade routes, discover buried treasure, and build new settlements in faraway lands. It's one of those games where you get to look at what everyone has done at the end, and then see how differently everybody's built their board, despite having the same cards flip over. And you have powers and stuff that can dictate what you do in your work. This is such a light game that I should hate it, but I have fun. I have fun laying down those cubes. It's just a really enjoyable experience. And I really like taking this game out at the end of the night when people want to play one more game, but they don't have a lot of time. This is a great semi-filler game. And we're continuing the positivity here. Next, we have Endless Winter. So in Endless Winter, you're leading a tribe of people, building ruins, hunting animals, getting new members, and a bunch of other actions, all spread across way too many different playing areas. This is definitely a kitchen sink type game. This is the type of game where the designer, you can tell, just threw in a bunch of different mechanisms, all in different areas on your table and said, like, have at it. And for me, it works pretty well. I will say that this has fallen off a bit for me. I would typically rate this as an A, but as it stands right now, it's sitting at a B. I'm starting to get the sense that things are starting to feel, every turn I take is starting to feel very similar to the last game I played of Endless Winter, but I definitely still think it's a very good game. This is one of those games where I think it's going to benefit immensely, at least for myself, for expansions. So next we have Weather Machine. These games have always felt a little procedural to me, but typically as you're playing, that feeling of, okay, you're going to perform this action instead of just getting wood or something like that. It's you go through this list where it's like, okay, I have to do 1, then I do step 2, then I do step 3. And typically as you're playing, the theme of the game, of a Lacerda game, is so good that stuff sort of like washes away and you forget about it. But here, it didn't. And I think that's because the theme just didn't hit for me. And the turns themselves took way too long in this game. You can change the player order during the round, which isn't new for a Lacerda game at all. But here, sometimes you'd have turns that were just like drastically spread apart time-wise. Like you could start a round being first player, and then for the next round be the last player and have like 20 solid minutes where you're just doing nothing. And the worst part is that even when it's not your turn, you couldn't really plan because the board state seemed to change so much that there was just no point to planning anything. I'm ragging on it a lot here, just simply because I think it's a Lacerda game and I like his designs, but really I think it's an okay game. I think it's a completely okay game. It's a C. It's a C for me. And next up is Heat. Heat's a funny one for me because it's one of those things where, well, it's rated right now. I rated an A. I think Heat is a really good game. Heat is sitting in a funny spot because I was super psyched to play it, and while I really liked it, I gave it an A after all. I do at the same time simultaneously think it's overrated. Like people were gushing about this game for a solid year, and I think it's really good. I don't think it's brilliant. You know what Heat is? It's a push your luck racing game where you have to make tough decisions like whether or not to gun it around a corner and try to take the lead, or be more cautious and hope someone ahead of you makes a mistake. It's a lot of fun, and it plays really great at 5 players, which is a hard spot to fill in your collection when you're a board gamer. Because at 5 players, you're either getting like a brainless party game or you're getting something like Game of Thrones, the board game. There doesn't seem to be much in between. But this game hits that spot perfectly. You ever got a new game where you just got through sleeving a bunch of new cards and then you sit back and thought to yourself, man, I wish I could play a game based on sleeving cards. Well, guess what? Now you can. Dead Reckoning, it's here. In Dead Reckoning, you play as a pirate, moving your ship around and attacking cities, gathering resources and crew, and killing your friends, all while sliding cards into sleeves that act as upgrades for your crew. I was really looking forward to this one because Kim and I really like Mystic Vale, which is the same designer. We really like that mechanic of building your own card. And so we were hopeful to see a game sort of built around that that's a bit more meatier and has a bit more depth. And there was a good amount of things I did enjoy in this game. I love the cube tower for battles, more cube towers please, just like in Shogun, I love it. I also enjoy the fact that this is a fairly simple pick up and deliver game, which incorporates messing with other people. I don't know if you've realized this or not, but I am a mean player. I like when games allow me to be mean, okay? I'm the opposite of Rado, okay? I want to mess with people. But something about this game, unfortunately, it didn't hit right. I didn't like how the barrels worked. They're a resource in the game. And how sometimes they would get placed on an island, or how sometimes they were in your own hall and you had to go back and forth to pick them up. I just found the whole process irritating. And the sleeving cards bit sort of just became a little cumbersome as the game went on. And the area control mechanic as well, I found a little half-baked and uninteresting. It sounds like I'm being so harsh on this game that I'm going to give it a D, but I'm not. I think it's an okay game. It's a completely okay game. It's a C. A high C, but a C. Up next, we have Libertalia. So Libertalia is a re-implementation of the original game. In the game, all players have an identical hand of cards, and during the round, everyone secretly picks one card to play, and once all are revealed, you divide up the treasure based on the value of the cards. The cards themselves have powers to get you more gold and sometimes mess with your opponents. In my view, this is a classic game to me. But I gotta be honest, I prefer the original much, much more. I look at this new rendition as just so bland. It's the art that I hate. The art looks like that weird corporate marketing that you see, where those like cartoons that all look samey and uninteresting. Yeah, I hate the art in this game. I miss the old games like gritty realism of dirty looking pirates, and for some reason Alicia Cuthbert is one of the pirates. I miss that. The game does add more cards, and I don't know. It's a B. It's a B. I think the original is an A, but this rendition of it is a B. So up next we have Sniper Elite, the board game. This of course is based on a video game. In Sniper Elite, one player is the sniper while the others are the defenders. The sniper gets all the funds, sneaking around and completing all the objectives, which of course are killing people, while the others, the defenders, try to stop them. It's a very cool cat and mouse game where the sniper is constantly throughout the game popping up in various points on the board and taking out his objectives. And as you go along, the tension starts ramping up, and it's really enjoyable. And what's interesting is that as the defenders, you still feel powerful, because you all have your own individual powers, which can greatly impact the game itself, which is nice. I think this is probably one of the better hidden movement games. I don't like it as much as something like Mind Management, but I think it's up there. It's most certainly up there. This is an A rank for sure. Okay, so now we have another good game. It's Long Shot, the dice game. So in Long Shot, you are at a horse race and you're rolling dice to dictate how far that colored horse moves and who moves along with that horse. You can place bets, buy jockey equipment, and do a few mini games here and there to get more money to manipulate the race. Don't ask me how you're able to buy equipment for jockeys mid-race. I assume that the game has some sort of very complex, well thought out mythos of a magic system that surrounds it, but it's not in the rule book, so you just have to use your imagination, I suppose. This has fast become my go-to party game. I think this is one, if not the best, one of the best party games out there. I love the fact that you can almost never really win on your own. Like if you are the only person who has bet or bought a horse, you're not going to win because other players can manipulate the board. Other players can manipulate that race. So they can send your horse back. They can send your horse forward. So you kind of like in this position where you're working with people, but then also working against people. It's sort of this yin and yang between being a benevolent horse racing guy and being a complete dick. And I like that. I shouldn't be giving out S ranks for party games, but I feel like this deserves it. I feel like this deserves it. It's a fantastic game, and you should definitely buy it. You should definitely buy it. So up next, we have Frosthaven. Frosthaven is Gloomhaven, but a bit better. Despite saying that I dislike campaign games, which I do, I did enjoy Gloomhaven. I think Gloomhaven really blew me away, because I was expecting something really light, and then when we started doing the combat, I was like, whoa, this is pretty impressive. And this is coming from somebody who plays a lot of miniature games. But I think this one did a really good job. And I think Frosthaven sort of streamlines things and makes the combat just a bit more accessible. It makes the entire experience a bit more accessible. I would say this is an easy A rank game. Easy A. I don't know why my friend keeps trying to get me to play campaign games when he knows damn well that I'm just going to bounce after 2 or 3 plays, but at least it gives me fodder to make this list. So up next, we have Northgard. So Northgard is a dudes on a map area control game with deck building that has a pretty good 4X feel to it. Each player starts on their corner and then sort of dukes it out in the center and tries to get as many buildings as possible to win the game. I mean, I really wanted to love this game. I'm a huge, huge fan of the video game. But the actions in this board game just felt really simple and they felt really uninteresting. And to top it all off, the 2 games I played of this, we experienced a sort of like snowball effect where one person just went way ahead. And none of us felt like we had the tools at our disposal, because the game is relatively simple, to deal with that runaway leader problem. And there's certainly some randomness in the game, especially how the board gets laid out. You can really get snookered if the board doesn't go in your favor when everything's being revealed. Because if you can find a spot to be really isolated, you can build up those big buildings and make a hard time for everybody else to try to get to where you are to take over those buildings. I hate doing this because, I love the IP so much, but to me, just C? No, it's a D. It's a D. I'm sorry, it's a D. So moving away from the negativity, we can go right back to being positive with Mosaic, A Story of Civilization. In Mosaic, you're building your civilization by controlling regions on the shared map, building your cities, towns, and wonders, and developing technologies, and basically just playing a ton of freaking cards in front of you. It's built as a Civ game, but you don't really feel that except for the card play. You do feel a sense of progression when you're laying down tons and tons and tons of cards, and they're all giving you like these special abilities that combo and trigger with other special abilities. It's a neat feeling because you do feel as the game progresses that you are getting more powerful. I feel like this is a great, it's an S tier. For me, it's an S tier. This is not a game I'd recommend everybody go out and purchase or try, because I think for a lot of people, it's going to be like A or B, maybe even a C. But for me, this is S tier. I really love playing this game. Up next, we have Wonderland's War. So in Wonderland's War, I really love that little rondel mechanic where you take your worker around, gathering up new cards and then performing new actions. It's a tough, fun decision space that you're put into where it's like, okay, I really want that stuff way up ahead, but I don't want to miss my chance to get more stuff in the back. So you get that stuff that's closest to you and then hope that somebody else doesn't scoot around all the way around the board and get the good stuff. I also really like the bag portion building of this game. I don't know if you're familiar with Quacks. I liked it well enough, but I felt like there wasn't much game there. It felt very random and silly to me, whereas this game, there's a lot more meat on the bone, so to speak. It even has this almost Blood Rage feel where you can draft these cards, and some of these cards have like cool looking miniatures on them that of course come from the stories, and they provide you like this awesome power that you can use throughout the game. It's neat. It's really neat. Wonderland's War is S? No. Wonderland's War is an A. It's an A. It's a really good game, and I always have fun playing it. I just got the expansion, so I'm excited to try that out, and maybe it'll even move it to an S tier game. But for now, it's an A tier game. I love it. Next is Clank Catacombs. You know Clank. This is like the 4th rendition of the game. You are essentially a person going into a dungeon, and you want to get as much treasure as possible and then get out of the dungeon safely before the dragon wakes up and kills you all. Catacombs is a little different because the map isn't generated during setup, it's generated as you play. Clank is super easy to learn, it's super fun to play, it's a great push your luck game. This is a really good rendition of the game. A lot of people think this is one of the better ones, but I'm a spaceman. I think In Space is better than Catacombs. But as it stands, the Clank is S tier. This one is A tier. Both are solid. You really can't go wrong with owning either one, or any of the renditions really. They're all good. Next, we have the wolves. So your wolves are forming packs and trying to get territory. You'll build shelters, kill some prey, and beat the ever-living hell out of other wolves until the moon is full, and then once the moon is full, you count up all your points, and whoever has the most points is the winner. The game has this really interesting action selection system of 6 double-sided landscape tiles that you flip to take an action, which makes other landscape tiles visible to take further actions. The game did a great job of encouraging people to forward plan. This can be a drawback for some because some people take a lot of time to think about their turns, but if you have anybody like that in your group, you should kick them out because they're not your friends. The game was really tense and dynamic, and it was just a lot of fun. I really liked it. I don't think it's a brilliant game by any stretch of the imagination. I think I played it on Board Game Arena, and I definitely should give it a few more plays. But as it stands right now, I think it's a solid B. It's a B. It's a B. It's very good. Next, we have Lacrimosa. So Mozart's widow is trying to get Mozart's work brought to the public, and it's your job to do it justice or something. I don't know. There is no theme here. But you're traveling, documenting memories, and doing a few other silly actions. It's a Euro game. You do Euro stuff. I think it's a cool idea for a game. I like the concept of the theme, but it's definitely not well applied here. But thankfully, gameplay felt very tight. since you have very few cards in the round and the cards are multi-purpose. The card play, of course, was very satisfying. I enjoyed upgrading them to do more powerful things. This is what the game calls, I think, memory cards, which didn't make a lot of sense to me, but who cares? It was cool. I will say the game felt a little samey at times, but yeah, I give it a B. I was thinking A, but I think I give it a B. Because like I said, it did have a repetitive feel sometimes. This is another one of those games like Wolves that I think I'm going to have to play a few more times. Next, we have Marvel Remix. Super light, quick card game where you're building this sort of hodgepodge of superheroes, trying to get the perfect hand as you discard heroes you don't want and grab those that you do want from either other players' discards or the deck. You do all this to the end and see how many points you get based on how those heroes and villains sort of interact with one another. There is something about this light little card game that I really enjoy. Again, similar to Longshot, this should be a game I hate, yet I really like it. I think it's because I'm always sort of invested in other people's turns. It didn't feel like solitaire play, even though you don't directly interact with people, because I'm always trying to do my best to see like, okay, what cards do they want? What cards don't they want? And I'm paying really close attention. And that to me is the mark of a good game, especially for a filler game. To me, I think, is it a B or an A? I gotta go with my gut. I think it's a B. It's a really good game. Next, we have Nemesis Lockdown. Nemesis, I don't think we've discussed at all. If I were to make a top 10 games list, this would definitely end up on it. Not Nemesis Lockdown, but the original Nemesis. The original Nemesis, to me, is an easy S tier game. But this rendition that came out last year, or 2022, just doesn't feel as fun. And frankly, I was a tiny bit disappointed that it didn't do much to innovate the original game. It always tells a really, really fun story. But yeah, Nemesis Lockdown, it's a B. It's a B. Up next, we have Wayfarers of the South Tigris. Wayfarers is a dice worker placement game where you're exploring the land and sea and heavens to get points. Also making sure to recruit new guides that'll give you some powers to chart the stars. It's a really great game, and arguably, I think it's one of their better designs. Primarily because you are just overwhelmed with the amount of options that you can have in this game, which, as I've explained, Kim and I really love. Like, if you have all 3 colored workers and all your dice available to you, literally every spot on the board and all the cards surrounding the board are open to you. And it's like I said, it's overwhelming, but it's a hell of a lot of fun. Kim and I really like this one. For us, this is an easy A game. And you definitely need to check out our review of it if you want more details on it. Easy A. So up next, we have Oathsworn Into the Deepwood. So Oathsworn is this legacy campaign game where you're going along this persistent story and encountering bad guys along the way, which you'll try to kill on the shared board using your might cards and dice. There's something in this game called Battle Flow where when you play your combat cards, they temporarily go to the side because they're on cooldown, which reminds me sort of like a video game, which I thought was an interesting mechanic. But all in all, the combat just didn't feel as good as it did in Gloomhaven. I wasn't making the same interesting choices and feeling like I'm truly coordinating with my friends. You move and you attack and you get some sort of tokens or whatever. Like it just felt boring. There were no ways to stun opponents or to like disarm them or trip them or like do something cool, like knock them down. It didn't feel like I was really interacting with the world that I was supposed to be engaging in. And player interaction was boring. Player interaction felt like I was just telling friends like, hey, you're in my way, I need you to move. That was it. That was the player interaction. I do like that the experience felt a little cleaner and a little less cumbersome than Gloomhaven. Like you can certainly get a session of this done a lot quicker, and I guess that's a good thing. I would give this, I don't hate it, I just don't like it. I would give this a D. I would give this a D. This is going to upset a lot of people, especially since it's ranked super highly on Board Game Geek. So, don't take my word for it. Give it a shot yourself. I didn't enjoy it. Go on Tabletop Simulator, test it out. Up next is Evergreen, which is sort of loosely based on photosynthesis. In Evergreen, you build a forest and draft a card at the start of the round that dictates what biome you can perform an action in. When everyone is done, the sun shines on the forest and you get points if your trees are able to collect light. But you have to be careful because trees cast shadows, so they can block the light collection of other trees that are behind them. It's a really cool mechanic that I always have a lot of fun with. I love that sun mechanic. But the difficulty is that I've seen it before. It was in photosynthesis, and I like photosynthesis more because there was actual player interaction. I could mess with other people. Again, I'm a mean player. I loved building big giant trees in front of other people's trees just to make sure they didn't collect the sun. But unlike that game, there's no player interaction here. Like, not at all. It's kind of boring. Kim really likes it. I kind of feel like it's a D game for me. But I don't hate it. It's fine. Actually, you know what? I guess it's a C game. It's a C game. It's that sun mechanic. If it didn't have that cool sun mechanic, it'd probably be a D or an F. But because it has the sun mechanic, it's a C. So up next is Great Western Trail, Argentina. I'm not going to explain Great Western Trail to you. You know what it is. I think this is the best one in the series for me. The difference between the versions and the other is that for this one, you get a fourth worker called a farmer. And the way you get him is you don't hire him in the traditional sense. What happens is that you encounter him as you're going along the board and he's like working on a farm or whatever. And if you help these farmers enough, they'll join your cow rustling fellowship as you head to Mordor to dump all your cows into Mount Doom to get cash. And you also have to get grain in this game because the cows have to be fed. So it's another resource that you need to have when you get to that end track. Kim and I love Great Western Trail, and we definitely think that this is the definitive version. So, like I said, this is an easy S rank. This is an easy S rank, even despite being a reimplementation. I give it an S. That's how good it is. Up next is Planet Unknown. So in Planet Unknown, you'll take a tile from the section of a Lazy Susan that has been placed in front of you, either by yourself or by another player, and then plop it down on your board. Each tile represents a tech, and when you lay that tile down, you'll move up in the tech ranking for that tile. When I first saw that Lazy Susan, I thought this is the most gimmicky crap I've ever seen. And yet, I liked it. I liked it a lot. It worked really well. The game is relatively simple. It has 0 downtime, but unfortunately it also means it has 0 player interaction, which is unfortunate, but it's still a really good game. I always have fun playing this game. It doesn't overstay its welcome. I would give this an easy B. I could see this falling to a C, in a year or two, but for now, it's a solid B. So up next we have Revive. And in Revive, you're playing a tribe of people trying to repopulate and rebuild a destroyed post-apocalyptic world. Again, I'm a sucker for multi-use card play. I really enjoy figuring out how to slot each card into the board, and I loved how it felt almost like a deck builder, but my entire deck was pretty much just available to me at all times. There's just a lot of options on your turn, which I really enjoy, and the way the exploration works and the engine building, it all blends together really well. Even despite the fact being a sort of hodgepodge of different mechanics, they work well here. This, for me, is an easy A game. An easy A game. I enjoyed it far more than Kim did, but if you want a more detailed explanation of the game, definitely check out our review. Next, we have Sea Salt and Pepper. In Sea Salt and Pepper, you build your hand of cards and draw 1 card from one of the 2 piles available, or 2 from the deck. You keep 1, discard the other, and if you play a pair, you get some special power depending on the card type you play. You do all this, of course, to score points. The game felt, to me, despite the fact that it was an incredibly short, light game, it felt a little clunky. And the powers themselves weren't particularly interesting, at least not interesting enough to keep me invested. I also didn't enjoy having my cards stolen from me, and for that, I'm going to give it an F. I'm just kidding, of course. Or maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm just so salty. Maybe I'm so sea salty that I'm giving it an F. I just don't. I hate it. I hate this game. Sorry. Up next, we have Tiletum, which is the most Euro of Euro games. There is no theme to speak of, but I do love that feeling of agonizing over your turn every single time, and Tiletum provides that. When you choose your actions, you're choosing from this wheel that's randomly set up each time, and you're picking both the action and the dice that is on that action. You get the resource amount of the pip value and color of the dice, and then you get to take a certain amount of action points. Choosing that action, like I said, is always hard, but therein lies the fun. It is, however, one of those games where if you have someone in your group that takes a long time to take their turns, it might not be as enjoyable, but I really liked it. I really liked it. For me, it's an easy A. Next, we have Woodcraft. So Woodcraft is a very tight contract fulfillment game. For myself, it wasn't particularly interesting, except the action selection wheel, which is split into quadrants. There are 7 tiles that represent the different actions you can take, and on those tiles, you get certain amounts of bonuses. It reminded me a lot of Praga, which is his other game. It's a cool little puzzle that you get to perform where you're trying to fulfill those contracts as efficiently as possible. It's something I'd imagine to be a great solo player game, but as a multiplayer experience, it was very lackluster. But you don't have to take my word for it. Kim really loved it. For myself, it's a D. I bet you Kim would give it probably an A. I didn't really enjoy it, which sucks because I love the designer. Okay, so up next, we have Sentinels of the Multiverse Definitive Edition. So Sentinels is a cooperative game where you pick a hero and you battle with your buddies cooperatively against a selected villain. I'm going to say this right now. If you are a Sentinels fan, you need to turn away right now, okay? You need to go away. You need to turn the video off. Or at least skip ahead, because what I'm going to say is not going to please you. I loathe Sentinels. I loathe it. It is a game that I had purchased eons ago. And when I bought it, I thought it was okay. And it is one of these games where I kept pushing on my friends because I thought for sure it was just going to get better. And because I had seen so much hype around, especially on the Dice Tower, where people were like, yeah, this is such a great game. This is a great game. And the more I played it, the more I just started to freaking hate it. The characters being played always just felt completely underwhelming. You know, your choices on your turn, to me, always felt super obvious. But the worst part of Sentinels is the bookkeeping. The bookkeeping is awful. Come mid-game, you just don't want to play anymore because you don't want to have to deal with all that crap that you have to do at the end of the round. Like, oh, I need to do this, and this triggers this, and this blah, blah, blah over here. And it felt like I was engaging in some really shitty Excel spreadsheet written in a different language, and I was trying to organize it. It was bad. I'm really happy that I sold this years ago. This to me is an easy F. I'm not sorry about this. I'm not sorry about this at all. This will upset some people, but this is how I feel. I hate it. I hate it so much. So next we have Twilight Inscription, a roll and write that does its absolute best to mimic Twilight Imperium. Not really, but it's still a pretty good game. It's a pretty enjoyable engine building puzzly type game where everyone takes their turn simultaneously in stages, and everyone was trying to build the best empire in the galaxy through a slew of mini games. All the factions felt varied, and they sort of had their own strength, which was nice. You're also fighting 4 different wars to the players to your right and the player to your left. So despite being a roll and write, there was actually a good amount of interaction, which is a pleasant surprise because typically in these roll and write games, there's like no interaction at all. Like I love Hadrian's Wall, but it is a solo playing experience. But here I actually found myself looking at my opponent's board a lot because I wanted to see, what they're trying to do so that I could either avoid it or get to it first. I really like that we're starting to see more heavier roll and write games because I'm not as big a fan of roll and write as Kim is. I find they always feel a little lacking to me. And like I said, they never really have any interaction. But this one had an okay amount. Me and Kim enjoyed this. I think all in all, it's a really good B game. It's a really good B game. Up next we have Splendor Duel, which of course is a 2-player reimplementation of the original and classic Splendor. So in Splendor Duel, you collect gems and try to get as many cards as possible. Each card you get provides you a discount on future cards. It's Splendor, you know the drill. Splendor is fascinating to me. It's one of those games where it's like really, really popular. And I don't really understand why. I think it's good. I think it's a decent game, but I don't understand why it's so popular. And of course, Splendor Duel is it's more of the same. It's not bad, but it's not particularly good, which makes it the perfect candidate, I think, for the C tier. Next, we have Vagrant Song. I had high hopes for this game because it's made by Weird Games, and Weird Games makes my favorite miniature game of all time, Malifaux. I wish I could get all of you at home, all you freaking board game players, to try some of these miniature games, especially Malifaux. Yeah, it's a little longer, but the amount of depth in these games, especially Malifaux, is just, it's so wonderful. Anyway, back to their inferior product, Vagrant Song. So Vagrant Song is a cooperative story-based boss battler thing where you play the role of a vagrant who has to fight hobo train ghosts. I definitely love the theme. I think it's fantastic. Of course, the art is bloody beautiful, but none of the bosses that we fought, at least when I played it 4 times, none of the bosses felt particularly challenging. All my decisions felt kind of obvious. The game sort of felt like it was dragging on a bit, and the whole thing just wasn't particularly exciting. And the worst part is that each scenario ended up sort of adding rules, and the rules didn't add fun, they just added more overhead, and it just became annoying after a while. I do really like that this particular boss battler tried to differentiate itself from other boss battlers by using action points. I think it was mostly well done, but it wasn't enough to really entertain me and hold my attention. I think all in all, there was a lot of good ideas here that did not materialize into a good game. So for that, it's a D. It's a D. So next we have Verdant. So in Verdant, you're making your house super pretty with plants by placing cards in 3 rows and 5 columns. Rooms have to be placed next to plants, and each plant has some light requirement you need to meet. There's a good amount of ways to score points in this game, and for a lighter game, it did manage to hold my interest. I did find it at least somewhat engaging. I played this mostly online on Tabletopia. I think I played it about twice, and I think I would like to give it a few more plays. But as it stands right now, to me, it feels like one of those solid C games. It's not something that I would rush out right now to buy, but it's something that if a friend were suggested, I would give it a go. It's charming at best and a little boring at worst. So finally, we have War of the Ring, the card game. We're ending on a high note here. So the game revolves around two teams of two players, one playing the Free Peoples and the other playing the Shadow, and you're essentially duking it out. Good versus evil, all decided by this deck of cards that each player has. The only problem is that to play cards, you have to discard cards, which to me is always a really good way to evoke some tension and a great amount of anxiety. The good kind. Because that card you're getting rid of, while it may not be good in this particular situation you're facing, it might be amazing in future situations. So that's a tough choice, and I really like that. And of course, it has team play, something I'm a huge sucker for. I love that dynamic of working with a person, but then working also against people. I don't know why more games don't utilize this, but here it works really well. It just makes you feel like you're part of something a bit bigger, which I think this game accomplishes beautifully. Yeah, this is an easy S rank game for me. An easy S rank. It's tense, it's engaging, it's super deep, it's ultra competitive, and we managed to get this done on our first play in under 2 hours. So I'm really happy with this one. And that's it. That's all the games that I played that came out in 2022, tier ranked. I think it was a really good year. I mean, you could look at how many games I gave an A rank to. I gave more games an A rank than I did any other rank. This was a solid year, much better than last year. Yeah, we got some games on there that I wasn't particularly fond of, but all in all, just a really good year. And once again, please don't let my hate of a game that you love spoil that game for you. You can engage with me in the comments section if you want. I respond to all of them. I read all of them. Just understand that just because I hate the game that you love doesn't mean that it's a bad game, and I'm not a bad person for not liking the games that you love. So go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section to let me know how horribly, horribly wrong I was to not like the game that you absolutely love. Oh, and definitely let me know if there was something that I missed, because I feel like I played all the games that I'd be interested in from this year, but if you think there's something even better that I missed, let me know. And that about wraps it up for today, guys. See you later.